I'm Dave Haynes. I'm the opinions editor at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, and I'm joined today on 4th and State by Rebecca Blank, who's the new chancellor at UW-Madison. Chancellor Blank, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks for being here. So you kind of walked into the tail end of a political firestorm over these reserve accounts at UW-Madison and the other campuses. I wonder what priority you're placing in your early days on the job in sort of getting along with the legislature, creating relationships.
Well, my main job in these first 3 months is to build relationships on campus with all sorts of folks who I'm just meeting for the first time in the last few weeks, as well as off campus. And I put a very high priority on spending time with the governor and his staff, on spending time with the state legislature in downtown Madison, and making sure that I know these folks and they know me, and we have an open line of communication.
Let me bring up something that occurred a couple of years ago. Your predecessor, Biddy Martin, and Governor Walker proposed this idea of a public authority for UW-Madison. In other words, splitting it off from the rest of the system. What do you think of that idea now? What do you think of the idea of a separate institution outside the system? So,
I'm a believer in systems. I have seen states where they have multiple universities that each compete for state dollars on, sort of every institution for itself, and that type of budget free-for-all is never helpful to anyone. So, the system plays a very important role in terms of coordinating activity across all of the universities, and there's a balance here of how much autonomy we have and how much control the system has. But if we didn't have the system, we'd have to create it, I think, to work effectively with the state legislature. And I'm quite committed to working effectively in this system and with the state legislature.
I remember when I was covering this 2 years ago, I called Michigan, which has a quite different system than we do. And one of the people at University of Michigan said, well, we're sort of looking at you guys. We think maybe we need to create that.
Well, there is no one right model. I spent 8 years at Michigan. Michigan's lived under that system for more than 100 years. We've lived in our system now, particularly the joint system, for 40 years or so. And, it makes it work.
But UW-Madison is receiving something like 15% of its funding now from the state. You're going to be more reliant on donations. You have this huge sort of influx of research dollars. Is UW-Madison really a public institution any longer?
So, University of Wisconsin at Madison is fundamentally and historically a public institution. If you look at where it comes from and what it is, our alumni think of it as the University of Wisconsin, identify it with the state. That's part of their deep commitment. Many of them had grown up in this state and went there because it was their state school. That type of identity is deeply held, and I don't want to change that. It's one reason we have such deep commitments is, loyalty and place are often closely linked, and we have a place identity, and that's important. It's also true that if you simply look at campus, it's clear we're a public school. We have 14 schools and colleges. Most private schools are not nearly so complex. And we have 14 schools and colleges because we are here to serve the citizens of the state. And that means we have an education school, we have a nursing school, we have a pharmacy school, we have a veterinary medical school, we have an agricultural school, because those things are all necessary to serve the state. So our very structure is deeply public. And I took this job in part because I believe so much in public institutions. Now, all of that said, the model of funding has changed. The state provides less money, and we have to rely on other sources of funding. But that doesn't mean that we aren't public in a pretty fundamental way.
Let me ask you this: UW, through the Wisconsin idea, has long said that UW ought to sort of spread its wings throughout the state. How does that relate to the Wisconsin economy? You're an economist. What effect does, what effect can the UW-Madison campus have on the state's economy?
So I've spent a lot of time in the last 4 years in the Department of Commerce visiting places that have been very effective at generating clusters of growth, right? And if you look at every really successful place where growth has occurred rapidly and sometime in the last decade, a very important partner in that are the educational institutions, the community colleges, the four-year colleges, the research universities. every single place that I visited had at least one major research university in the middle of it or very close by. And the reason for that is the growth depends upon having the skilled workforce that they need. That's fundamentally a higher education issue oftentimes, to provide the detailed training that companies need. And secondly, it requires these companies staying on the front edge of innovation. And you need the research university to go back and forth with the companies to keep them on the front edge, both hiring students, interacting with the university, setting up collaborative research institutes. So, if this state is going to grow, it needs a place like Wisconsin or like UW-Milwaukee, which is also obviously a comprehensive research university. And we need to be very much engaged with the private sector and with the public sector in a strategic plan for growth. And what we bring to the table is a strong part of the skilled workforce piece and a strong part of the staying on the front edge of innovation piece.
What about the idea of startups? The state has not traditionally done very well in terms of starting companies, at least the number of companies we start.
This is something we've been working at very hard at Madison. We've tried to do a number of things to provide support to students, to faculty, to those associated with the university who have ideas that they want to take out and turn into products, and trying to provide, people with ideas are not necessarily the same people who know how to run a business, right, and how to start up a business. So we've tried to do a number of things and working jointly with other groups in, around the state and around the region. So our university park, is a place that's really welcomed startups and businesses. The Wisconsin Institutes for Discovery is quite deeply embedded in this agenda. It's one of the things that I think universities need to be about more so than they have in the past, is working in the midst of this laboratory to market space and making sure that the things that happen at the university don't stop there, but go out to the citizens of the state, to the businesses of the state, and help generate more economic growth.
One last question. Any predictions for the football season?
Oh, we're going to have a great season. Everything that I know about this coach is that he's going to have a wonderful team, and we've obviously got some great players coming back and some really good new players. So, I'm looking forward to Labor Day weekend in the first game.
I bet you are, and I assume you have your ticket by now.
I've got my ticket. I'm ready. I've got my red shirts, too.
Excellent. Well, next time we'll see you in a red shirt.
All right.
Rebecca Blank, thanks so much for being with us on 4th and State.
Thank you.